Welcome to the Leader Impact Podcast. We are a community of leaders with a network in over 350 cities around the world dedicated to optimizing our personal, professional, and spiritual lives to have impact. This show is where we have a chance to listen and engage with leaders who are living this out. We love talking with leaders, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions to make this show even better, please let us know. The best way to stay connected is through our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media at LeaderImpact. I'm your host, Lisa Peters, and welcome to our podcast with Darci Lang. Darci is an inspirational speaker, an award-winning entrepreneur, Canadian Association of Professional Speakers Hall of Fame recipient, a best-selling author, a wife, and a mom whose simple tool helps individuals reframe the way they look at and think about their interactions and relationships with others. And in a world where a plethora of self-help books, webinars, and podcasts teach us how to be happier, our guest Darci Lang fiercely believes that success and happiness are simply a matter of focus, focusing on the 90% positive aspect of our reality that can transform our lives. A career spanning 3 decades, Darci has been sharing tough love with empathy, creating perspective shifts and having an impact on hundreds of businesses in diverse industries. She helps to transform cultures, employee engagement, and in turn boosts morale and profitability. From farmers, ironworkers, and linesmen to medical professionals, educators, and administrative professionals, her connection to her audience is outstanding. So sit tight and get ready for a conversation with Darci Lang as we chat about focusing on the 90% in your personal, professional, and spiritual journey. Welcome to the show, Darci.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me.
It is really nice to see you. It has been, I'm going to say over a year and a half since we last chatted. I think COVID had started, we chatted a bit, and then we just sort of went our ways.
Oh, it's interesting. I've never used the phrase, I never think time goes quickly, but over these last couple of years, I really feel like, it's 20, what? 2? How did that happen?
Yeah. And you've been a busy lady. Every time I talk to you, you're like, I got 5 minutes. And you're, I know you're writing books and that's where you're putting a lot of your focus. So I'm very excited to chat with you today. And we're going to start with just allowing you to introduce yourself and share with our listeners and our viewers a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, great. Well, I'm 52, born here in Canada, in Saskatchewan. I was born in Saskatchewan, had a very colorful childhood. I grew up in and amongst 5 different families. I have 10 half and step brothers and sisters, and I grew up very quickly. I was been told my whole life that I was an old soul. And when I was 18, I moved away from home because that's what we did in 1987. And I got a job at a tuxedo rental company when I was 18. I kind of grew up in a family where a lot of entrepreneurs and, there wasn't a lot of money, means, marks for post-secondary. So getting a job is what we did in our family. And I got a job at a tuxedo rental company when I was 18 years old, which was very fun back then. And very long story short, when I was 24, I bought my own store. And little did I know God's plan for me, because I moved my own store when I was 24 to Regina, which at least I feel like you and I have known each other like that long.
That's where we met.
I know. And that was 28 years ago, if you can imagine. And that led to my speaking career. My bank manager asked me a week into buying my tuxedo business what my secret was to having, kind of a sustenance base at 24, and the belief in myself and the resilience and all that it took to open a business at 24 and to run my own business. And I told him about this magnifying glass idea that I read in a book, that we have this big magnifying glass out in front of us and we have a choice what we focus it on. And the bank manager said, "Wow, that's neat. What percentage of life do you think is great?" And I said, "Honestly, Ed, if you really boil down your life, it's about 90%. And do you believe, Lisa, Friday I gave my first presentation. I bought my company on a Monday. Friday I gave my first presentation, and poof, here I am.
Yeah. I remember coming to see you at Malabar, and I was selling radio at the time. And I don't know if you ever really bought from me, but you were a highlight in my day.
Aww.
You were so nice, and you just made me feel so good in your presence. So it is just an honor to be looking at you from here.
Aw,
So
thank you.
my question though, you grew up, I mean, you said you had many families, you sort of bounced, you, a lot of maybe stepbrothers, stepsisters. Was there anyone in your life that was intentionally as happy as you are now? Like, was there someone that influenced you?
Right. The happy piece, no, the happy piece came from me at 24. Honestly, I call 24 was what I called my quarter life crisis. And it's so great because now I'm in my midlife. I don't have to have one anymore because I've already done that. But honestly, Lisa, for the first 24 years of my life, I was always a resilient kid, but I'd been through a lot of trauma and there was some abuse and crisis and, some really mucky 10% in my childhood. And I
Yeah.
honestly spent a lot of my life in a little bit of up to 24 in a victim mentality. And I did a lot of blaming and I was very unhappy and I was attracting a lot of negativity. But my dad was always my grounding force. My dad raised me in the early 70s and my dad was my grounding force. So in terms of a happy person, I didn't have exceeding happy around me, but I had a lot of very resilient people who did a lot to overcome their obstacles. And that has absolutely been an inspiration for me.
I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And the great news is that if we are there unhappy, we can be happy. You have proven that. Like,
Right.
find the 90%.
Because
Be 90. Yeah.
right. We have this profound opportunity to become where we came from or the opposite of where we came. And you have to wake up one morning and decide what you want. And blaming people for your life is a very old story for most people. So, how about we stop doing that? Make the courageous choice to change the person in the mirror, the hardest person to change, and make those decisions every day. It's not about waking up and doing it, it's about every day turning the dial slightly, and that's when I met God too. So I can tell you more about that. I'll let you ask the questions, but
Awesome.
that was a pivotal year.
Wow. So, and we're going to come to your spiritual towards the end. It's how we sort of flow on this. So, I want to talk a little bit about your professional career. I mean, share with us a little bit how you became Darci Lang, the best-selling author and a big speaker. And, were there, I mean, there's a whole journey there, but any pivotal moments, how you
Yes.
got there?
Well, the pivotal moment of being asked, well, again, I'm running my own tuxedo store at 24. Then, as you also know, I started a bridal show the same year. So I had this trade show business. I had a tuxedo store. And then the pivotal moment came when my bank manager asked me to speak. And that's why when I mentor young people, I say, try everything. Like, do the jobs even though you think the job will lead to nothing, the job will lead to what you're supposed to do someday. So be open to what
Oh,
God's
yeah.
plan is for you and say yes. So the pivotal moment was standing in front of that bank employer's staff group. I can literally be there right now. I was wearing this light blue suit. It was my power suit back then, remember? And my husband affectionately called it my Matlock suit. And I just remember standing in that lobby. And when I was done, I knew that for me was a pivotal moment. I just knew that day that I was to do this for the rest of my life.
Wow. So you have gone on, you've got many books. I've got them here. So we started with Focus on the 90. And I think that really, as a speaker, I think that moves up your career. You got a book in hand, and there was Focus on the 90, then there was Living the 90, then there was Lead the 90.
Mm.
And I have to say, this was my favorite book. And I think it was my favorite book. So it's called Lead the 90% Kind Leadership. When you gave me this book and when we met and you told me a little bit about it, I gathered a group of 10 female leaders from Saskatchewan, and every Wednesday night we met this and did one chapter. And I think that was the best part of the book, is sharing the book, because I think we all think we have it together. But sharing it with someone was the most pivotal point for me, and to understand that I'm not always right. I can be better, But I just want you to talk about your books and just quickly Lead the 90 and what's new, because I think you're working on something new.
Thank you. You're my new agent, I think, Lisa. So thank you. And thank you for rallying that group. I was very grateful you did that. So the first book, Focus on the 90%, was like you suggested. As a speaker, to have a book was notoriety, but it was also something at the back of the room because people would come to the conference or they would hear me at their staff event and say, I'd really like my spouse, partner, mom to hear this message too. So it was literally the intention, purpose, mission was a back of the room kind of take home idea. So I'm very blessed that that book is in its 8th edition. Then, yes, we're getting to spiritual next, but the God piece was in 2019. I'm a very divinely inspired person and I get a lot of downloads. And I was given a vision for that second book. And I needed people to understand a little bit more of the raw, authentic pieces of how I have had to live my message. You said it. We're not all perfect. And people need to, it's like this, Lisa. People will often say to me, as a motivational speaker, they'll say to me, I need proof that your message works. And I say, I am the living, breathing proof that I am the complete opposite of what I ever thought I would be. Literally, figuratively, emotionally, and spiritually. I am the proof. So I wanted them to know how a further deep dive into how I've had to live this message. Then with 2020, a year off, thank you, COVID, I was home, grounded, as you know from the event world, we all were. And again, I was very divinely called to write Kind Leadership because I've been so blessed to sit at the back of the room as an invited speaker virtually and live as a speaker for 28 years, Lisa. And I have watched the leader come in the room or sign into the Zoom and team meeting. And I've been sitting at the back of the room observing their behavior for all these years, watching the nuances of what made people great and not so great. And though I'm a Christian woman, I'm also a highly intuitive energy type person as well. And I have literally kept track for 28 years. And I thought it's time to write about what I observed. And as you know, I interviewed the top 20 kindest leaders I have met because I learned the best of the best were kind. So that's and now I'm writing a woman's book, Embrace the 90%. And God is giving me all this content to write a 5th book called Work the 90%. It'll be a rapid fire, how to run your business and be a great entrepreneur book. So yeah, I'm
Oh,
so blessed, so blessed.
I can't wait for that. So you're a speaker, 28 years of speaking, and then, COVID.
Mhm.
And I hate, I think I'm starting to hate the word pivot, but I'm going to use it. But,
Sure.
how did you pivot? I mean, you were on speaking again. I mean, you had a new presentation, I think. And, how did that happen for you? Because it looks easy. You make it look easy.
Oh, it was not easy. It was not easy. It was, I think it's interesting that people say COVID hit. I'm a big, I like to observe how we talk, how we think, how we treat ourselves. And the words that we use are power. And we keep saying when COVID hit our business, didn't it, Lisa? It was like a wrecking ball. It blew through my business and wiped 2020 clean. And I am blessed beyond to have the same assistant work with me for 28 years, my entire career. There's a seminar. But I said to my assistant Sandra, my admin assistant Sandra, let's take the well-oiled machine that we are, because we're a very well-oiled machine, and let's throw that machine away. Let's not like park it in some bush somewhere and then put it back on the track when things are normal again. Let's use this time that we've never had in our life to redefine who we are. And so we put a brand new machine on the track and we've been painting it and putting wheels on it and seats in it as it's been speeding down the track 1,000 miles an hour. I'm sure you can relate. And we
Yes.
have pivoted, shifted, twirled, danced, did whatever we had to do to keep the doors open. But I was open, Lisa, and it goes so well with what I preach. Rather than focusing on the 10%, which are the things we can't control, the things that aren't good in our life, I chose 90% of the time, because some days I just walked around in my house coat numb. But 90% of the time, I would choose to wake up in the morning and say, okay, so what is good about this and what can I control? And it changed my business. If you really took the time in COVID to reinvent yourself and dig for what was still good, I think this has been a transformative time. I truly do.
Yeah. I like that you said, sometimes you walked around in your house coat because
Oh,
you have to allow yourself that moment and then get up and get going. But allow yourself. It's okay. and then make a difference, get up going.
It's so okay. That's why I don't say focus on the 100%. It's not reality. It is not reality to be happy all the time, not reality to have your business, look good all the time. Your business doesn't go well, your marriage isn't perfect, my motherhood, I'm not a perfect mom, right? But the ability to say, okay, so I'm feeling 10% today. That's important. We all know people who shove down how they feel, Lisa, with drugs, shopping, Facebook, gambling. That's not healthy. Talking about how we feel is a healthy thing. But as you know, I have a very strict 3 times complain rule. And I don't complain about anything to the person in the mirror more than 3 times. I don't complain about anything in my business more than 3 times without having a solution meeting. Air how you feel, get some air on that and light on that. But then on the third time, stop complaining, look in the mirror and say, okay, it is what it is. This is my new normal, my current reality. This is COVID. This is my business. What do I need to do to change this and make it the best I can? Not them, not your ex, not you.
Yeah.
Then your life changes.
What are you personally doing to stay positive? And what advice would you give others during this time?
Okay. Oh, how much time do we have, Lisa? What I'm personally doing okay, I call it feed me first. I have so much I'd like to say to that, but I'll just give you the high level. I call it feed me first. So I feed me mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically. Then I feed the four-legged and two-legged in my house. And lately I love the four-legged way more than the two-legged, right? And then I feed the world. And I think what happens, especially when we grow up with the beliefs, love thy neighbor belief system, we're taught to feed the world and serve the world. Then we gave scraps to the people that we loved, and we had nothing left for ourselves, especially as women. And I came into a Christian faith at 24, having no religion base before that. And I meet a lot of women who are very tired and very worn out and very unhappy because they are serving the greater good, and that's wonderful and lovely, and we need you, but we're far greater healers in the world if we heal our own wounds and look after ourselves first. So the key to answer your question for me from a happiness standpoint is to constantly look in the person in the mirror and say, what does Darci need? What do you need to be rested, nourished, and taken care of so that you are upright and full? Then you can fill from the place of fullness, not depletion. So that's been very important over these last couple of years, is ruthless self-care. Ruthless. Even if no one taught you how to do it, that's an old story. It's like saying nobody taught me how to be happy. Okay. So what are you going to do about that? Well, no one taught me how to take care of myself. Even older story. Just do it already. Quit self-sabotaging for what? Believe you're worth taking care of.
Are your kids as awesome as you?
Oh, I have epic children. Really epic. And we've had some really real life challenge, Lisa. Like, again, I live what I preach. I don't have a perfect family. We've really mucked through some really difficult times in our family. But I've always given my children tools. And the most important thing is I've handed them tools to carry their own toolbox. I have this new saying in my house that I don't give free speeches to people who don't want to hear them. And I'm at the point where my kids are tired of speeches. And I said, perfect. Here's the toolbox full of tools of all the speeches and things that I've given you. Now you get to go live your epic life. So they are, but not at the price of us not dealing with some really serious stuff in our house.
Yeah. So you sound like the grounding force in your family. What do you do to be the grounding force? Is there anything, words of advice on being the grounding force?
The grounding force is, I'll go back to what I just said. It's making sure that I'm fed and making sure that I actually literally figuratively feel my feet on the ground. Because I'm in a high energy, brain never stops, writing books all the time person, especially during COVID, Lisa, you know what I noticed? That wasn't serving the people that I love. It honestly was hardly serving my audience right now. We didn't need a motivational speaker. We needed somebody who brought all that down to a real grounded place and says, okay, this has been tough. I'm not glossy. People died, Lisa. There was People lost their jobs. They haven't seen their families. They haven't seen their people in elder care. The mental health of the young people. Lisa, you and I've talked about that so many times. You've done so many podcasts and you've done things on the
Yeah.
impact of the mental health of our youth. This was very real. So in that realness, what could you do? Be a grounded, solid force for the people around you. And in doing that, all I did, Lisa, was make sure that the ruthless self-care pieces were there. I was rested, I was nourished, and I was taking care of my mind. Very important. I didn't watch the news. I didn't do any of the things that were toxic that would not help me feel grounded.
So we've, um, talking about your personal life. What about your business? What did you do in your business to stay healthy during this time?
Well, I got a realistic view of what was about to happen. So when it hit and wiped out all of our live events, I had to have a realistic view on. I'd never done a Zoom call before March 2020. I never had to rely on any technology. So I got really good at learning what I needed to learn to make sure that my business was viable. So as a person, I stayed grounded, but I also looked at, okay, so if this again, use the words is my new normal, my current reality, quit fighting what it is. It is what it is. Buckle in, embrace it, and show up positive and grounded for your business as well. So adapting to what had to happen. It's like having a job and complaining about what it used to be like here. So what? That doesn't make today any better. Show up for what it is today and do the best you can do. And I made lots of mistakes and it's all good.
Has it been hard for you to transition to the Zoom? Because you are on fire when you're on a stage. You're moving and it's exciting. Has it been hard?
You know what I made? I'll tell you a big mistake up front, Lisa, is I invested in all the gear, which is here right now, right? And I was going to do, and everybody was doing PowerPoints and slides and music and Zoom rooms and so I tried it. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring my the same person I am on stage, I'm going to bring my real authentic self to my virtual presentations. I don't do PowerPoint on stage. I carry a microphone. Why am I learning how to zoom in things that never worked for me anyway? So what I did was show up my authentic self. I feel very proud of the connection I've had through my Zoom events, but I desperately miss the human connection. Desperately. So I tried as hard as I could to look into this little camera and make it resonate out to 400 people. But I cannot wait to carry that little tiny banquet room coffee around a banquet room again and meet the people and hug. I'm a hugger. I just can't wait.
You are a hugger.
I
And
can't wait.
yeah, as I was planning for an event, having a conversation with a client, and I was just in a Leader Impact forum, and the speaker was talking about events, and exactly like you, like we just have to move with it. This isn't going away. This new normal, like move along, and events are really going to change because people are looking for that personal touch and that experience, and I'm craving that. You don't need to blow me away. I need to just I need an experience. Like I just need to be there.
Right. May I add another layer to that? So I keep saying to my motivational speaker friends, why don't you use this time now to become the absolute best version of yourself? Because when this is over, I don't want to crawl back to my normal life, personally or professionally. I want to bust back running into my life. And every choice I make every day, at least at 90% of the days, to wake up and take care of me will determine how we pop out. And how will you be remembered by your team as a leader, as an impactful leader? How will you be remembered by your team? Did you show up? Did you show up what you wanted them to be and show them what it looked like so that when this is over, they will have felt supported and loved by you? Or did you show up half empty? And I think it's never too late to stop in the tracks and say, what do I need to do to be the best version?
Yeah, that's really been coming to me. Just the words, just show up.
Yes.
Just show up for me. If I ask you to be there, because there is so much emptiness, sadness. People are struggling. If I ask you to show up, just show up.
Right.
So I love that.
And show up for yourself first. Even if humble, pious, learn not to, show up for you. Believe you are worth showing up for. Then you will naturally show up for the people that you love with less feeling of martyrdom And then you just have this full reservoir to give from, not at the expense of you, but it just adds value to your life then to feed your neighbor because you're fed.
Yeah. Good. Has there ever been a person in your life that has had a a major impact in your speaking, in your writing? Has there been a person?
So many.
One.
I've so many. I've always sought mentorship. Like at my quarter life crisis at 24, I became quite a junkie for motivational books and seminars and personal development and all that. And so there's many people I credit that to, but I've always been, because I really admire my father so much. And so I've always been somebody who sought mentorship. I have never had a career that I have not had an army of people in that industry who are a support to me. It's so important. You're doing that with what you're doing, right? In your group, having that colleague base of people to be able to bounce things off, essential. And now I'm passing the torch and giving it all away and happy, like I'm an open book and mentor all kinds of young people. Ask me anything, I'll tell you anything and give it all away.
What advice, since we're talking about the younger, like what advice would you give the younger leaders coming up?
Oh, my advice would be the base of my new book is to be kind. I don't care how smart you are, what you look like, where you come from, how many letters are behind your name. I don't care. I care, did you show up kind? And kind leaders will change the world. And you and I are parents to young adults. I've had an opportunity to informally crowdsource all the kids who've eaten my food over these last few years. And they will not work for unkind people. They won't. They quit. You and I stayed. They quit because they will not work for, they don't care. They want to work for kind. I've watched my daughter do online schooling for the last 2 years. And the difference between liking the professor online and not is whether or not they're kind. So I really admire, I really inspire young people to be kind. Learn how to be kind to yourself and go out to the world and be kinder human beings. Sounds simple, but I challenge you to Google how to be a great leader and find me one article that says you should be kind first. They'll say be punctual, be accountable, be innovative, be creative. But what about the kind? Because haven't we all worked for somebody unkind? Powerfully affects your life.
Yeah.
It's not
You don't
cool.
forget it.
No, it's not cool.
Yeah. It beats at you and
Yes. And affects your family. It affects your mental health. It
bring
affects
it home.
so what if young people just got it and they were kind?
Yeah. Good. All right, we're going to transition a bit because I know you have a bit of a spiritual story. I don't even know it, so I'm
Oh,
excited to hear a little bit about your spiritual journey.
okay. Well, again, 0 to 24, I had no reference for God, church, never been to church, funerals, weddings, nothing. It was quite unique. So when I met my handsome farm boy in the bar 28 years ago, he was Catholic. And my husband said, it's really important to me that my he's a baby boy of a Catholic mother. And he said, it's really important to me that would you consider even looking into this? And I thought, you know what? Sure. I had no base for it. So I remember the first time I went to church, it's in my book, but I had this perception of Catholic Church to be like a 300-year-old, guy who looked like the Pope leaning over the altar giving us some sermon for 3 hours. Like I just had no context for what a Catholic church would look like. So I'll tell you the full story. So I walk into this Catholic church with my handsome new boyfriend and his mom, who was like, I was her biggest fan. And, I wore my cotton dress and I didn't wear very much makeup and I was all, very sweet. And then I showed up at this Catholic church and this handsome priest is standing at the door. And I'm thinking, well, he's not 300, so it can't be him. And he looks at Darren, and Darren grew up going to this church. So he looks at Darren, he looks at me, he looks at Darren. He says, "Where'd you pick her up?" And I just burst out laughing, like, this is not what I expected to hear, right? Because I was new in the church and here this new girlfriend. That was just the best because it just set the tone for me on, okay, this is a more real experience than I thought.
Mhm.
And having grown up in a very colorful childhood, to meet families with 5, 6, 7 children and the same parents, huh? That was a novel concept. And then I started to meet some of the most loving people who had scripts for how to raise children and scripts for marriage that I'd never had an experience of. Honestly, I was baptized when I was 24, and I felt like God opened this portal of, I can't explain it. We need a whole 50 minutes to do it, but the portal opened up for me. My life changed that day. And I know it sounds pretty cliche, but I remember Father Joe Balzer, who baptized me. You might have even
Yes.
knew, right? I thought you might.
Yeah.
I'm on stage, this big formal baptism thing as an adult. Of course, my mother-in-law beaming in the front row, right? And he leans over to me and he says, "Hey, Darce, this is a chance to wash away all of your sins." And I smiled back at him and I said, "Do you think we have that kind of time?" And so that was my experience. And it has changed my life. It truly has. I am, again, being an energy person and an intuitive person, those are all God given. And people say, we can't talk about energy and talk about God. I say, God's given me all of these gifts. So I am just so beyond blessed. Again, I feel very divinely called. And in my work, my business is 100% referral. I'm blessed with, I can't tell you how much download I have for books. It's just God is constantly filling my heart and my
Oh,
mind. I'm very blessed.
that's a great story, Darcy. I knew none of that.
Yeah,
It's, and I know Darren. We went to school together,
right.
high school. So I mean, I know Darren, but yeah, what a lovely story. So can you, can you share any moments where you've combined your faith with your personal and your professional? And really, it's a tough gig, I think, for some people. Personal is one thing, but professional, you know,
Oh,
are you
I,
careful?
no,
No.
no, no. I wear my Christianity on my sleeve all the time. I talk about
Oh,
God all the time. I say, God this, God that. And people say, oh, you shouldn't mention God. What? Weird. Why? Yeah. And I've spoke to, let's see, in 28 years, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people.
yeah.
I've had 3 negative evaluation forms in my whole career. 3. I'm not saying
Oh,
people didn't think it. I'm not saying they didn't go and tell their friends things, but I've had 3 caustic evaluations about you shouldn't mention God. 3 in the tens of thousands evaluation forms. And you know what, Lisa? It's very interesting coming into the Catholic faith at 24 years old with zero base. And it's like my friends are like, why did you pick such a hard religion? Why don't you go be united or something easy? But when I became baptized as a Catholic person, I went through the RCIA, Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults, with Darren, which was very cool for him because I'd be like, why do you do that? I don't know. Why do we say that? I don't know. He didn't know. He was a cradle Catholic. He just did it. So we learned together. But I was very confused. So one day, God made all of this. And why did Eve have to eat the stupid fruit? Why did she focus on the 10%? Why did she focus on the 9? Like, I had a lot of questions. And Father Joel, who I went through that journey with, said to me, Darcy, I'm just going to tell you one thing. Do you want to know the best way to be a Catholic person? I said, yes, just sum it up for me. He said, just go be love in the world. Just go be
oh,
love and let people see what God has done for you in your actions, your behaviors, your joy. And if you go out joyful and happy, you don't have to say anything and they'll know. And so that's been my base. So I don't have to profess it. All I have to do is live my life that shows people, yeah, God's in there because I'm happy.
I love that because I believe that. I think I want people to know I'm a Christian by how I act, what I talk, what comes out of my mouth. You know,
Right.
I want people to know. I don't want to have to say it all the
Right.
time because I will. You have those 3 remarks on evaluations that whatever they said, which is
Whatever.
less than 10%. So yay. Um,
Right. So
but
what? And
yes,
again, let your behavior. And it's not Sunday morning. You don't go Sunday morning and you're nice to everybody. Go everywhere you go is like, I imagine it was easy for me to get around the God concept because I love my dad. So the concept of a father and a brother, I consider Jesus my brother. I just think if Jesus is in here with me at the grocery store, what would he want me to do right now? In my marriage, like, I don't have the perfect marriage. I'm not a perfect mom. I yell at my kids. I fight with my husband, of course. But I think a lot about my brother, and I walk with him when I walk in my cemetery here, which is my go-to peaceful place by my suburban home. I literally walk with him. Sometimes I hold his hand and I talk to him like he's my friend. And so I had to cut through some of the Catholic bits, Lisa, to get to the point of, oh, no, no, no. I'm not fear and sin and fire and brimstone. I didn't focus on any of that. I just took the love pieces and the fact that I am supported by these people who love me. Very cool. How could you not be proud of that? It's great.
yeah,
Changed
because
my
it
life.
is. Yeah, it's a relationship.
Agreed.
And God's open 24/7, 365, right?
Even in the
There,
10% times.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I used to have I took a seminar, and it was, if you're struggling praying, have a seat beside you that's empty. Pretend God's in the seat and just have a conversation. And for a while I had to do that.
Love
Like
it.
it was just it took me time to pray, and I was like, yeah, we're just gonna have a conversation, and it's still just a conversation with God, and I love it. It
Oh,
says when I'm driving in my car, sometimes my lips move, but thank goodness for car phones, because then people
right.
think you're on the phone. It's like I'm just talking.
Right. Because I learned through my journey in faith that that means as much to God as it does to you. And I've learned the most perfect, for me, the most perfect prayer is thank you.
Oh,
If you do nothing
oh,
else, say thank you. And even in times where you're low, thank you, woke up today. Thank you, I have a home. Thank you, I have food. Imagine doing COVID in a third world country in a refugee camp. Like, there isn't a day that I do not reflect on how grateful I am, even in the worst times of my life, Lisa. And we've had tough times in our family. And even at the worst, when you're on your knees, you can still scrape for what is good and believe. If I fight with my children, I say, do you know God picked me to be your mom? Like, I'm supposed to learn from you and you're supposed to learn from me. It's not going to be perfect, but let's learn what we're supposed to be here together to learn.
well, oh, you're just lovely. I love
Mhm.
listening to you,
Yep.
Darci.
I'm a big Lisa fan.
A lot of love going on here. So, Leader Impact is about your impact through your leadership, and you are an impactful person and an impactful leader. But my question I ask everyone is, have you considered what you want your faith legacy to be when you leave this world?
I think we've kind of summarized it, but I want my faith legacy to be that she was kind. That's it. That's it. I want people to remember the kindness, and not just sort of publicly, but just that undercurrent every time you let somebody in, every time you pay for the coffee, every time that you buy that young mom's groceries, like, just like, look for an opportunity every day to say, how can I bring kindness to this situation? Because kindness is love. And that's where I want to be, my faith legacy to be. Not in what I said, what I professed, how many crosses I had hanging in my house. I wanted just that simple, basic, she was kind.
She was
That's it.
kind.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And my last question, which I ask everyone as well, is what brings you the greatest joy?
To be alone. Especially right now, right? But desperate alone. And it took me a long time, Lisa. I had to wrestle through some serious demons and serious fear. And I didn't want to hear the voices in my head. I didn't want to hear what happened when I was alone. And I worked really hard on that with lots of counseling and support to get over the fears and the trauma and the triggers. And being alone, I asked for alone for my birthday. Like, you have to get
Oh,
out of here so I can be alone. So
yeah.
desperate alone is a way that I find the greatest source of joy. And
Wow.
I have different varying degrees of alone, but alone, I love being alone.
Well, I haven't heard that, Darci. And it's funny because I've talked about alone versus loneliness, two
Right.
very different words. One, I chose to be alone. You chose that for your birthday. Loneliness is just being so, like, you're not choosing it. And I found, as an entrepreneur, and I don't know if you found this, but we're alone. We work alone,
Yes.
and I sort of crossed over to lonely, and
Mm.
that's when I got sad and
Aw.
realized how hard I had to get out to meet, to because alone time is awesome, but sometimes you're just alone too much, right? You need to get out. You need to connect. We need to have relationships.
Agreed, and that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing with the network of leaders that you have across the country, and we motivational speakers have a network and an association as well, and that's really important to stay plugged into. My husband's a speaker too, so that's really cool. So we get to bounce ideas off each other, but I balance if I feel lonely, I allow that feeling. I remember I always have God with me. I allow that feeling. And then I do, the 3 times complaint. Okay, I've been lonely for 3 days. Ew, what do I need to do to reach out, to go out, do something that cuts the loneliness for me? And then, I loved when I was going through this. Sorry, that's a long answer here,
No,
but
you keep going.
when I was going through this Christian journey, I met one of the most beautiful Christian women I'd ever met. And she said, whenever she brought me to this idea of offering up. I'd never heard of this term before. She said, if I'm ever sick, say home with a cold, I offer that up to every woman who has a cold with nobody there to love and care for her. And so the loneliness piece for me, sometimes when I'm lonely, I just offer up prayer to the women that we don't know who are so desperately lonely, who don't have the means you and I do to go do something joyful, or a friend group to reach out to, or a husband who's supportive, or a partner who's supportive. And so that's really helped me in loneliness times to say, oh, there's a sweet soul sister out there somewhere who's lonely without the support that she so desperately needs.
Oh, you're just lovely, Darci. Thank you.
Thank you
for taking this time with us. The last 40 minutes is just, I always, every time I'm in a podcast, my cheeks just hurt because I'm smiling, and I love every minute. And I think all these podcasts is just a faith walk. And it is for me too, to hear other people's stories. So thank you for spending this time with us. And and when you say focus on the 90, that is you. And when people say walk the talk, Darci Lang walks the talk. She is focused on the 90.
Thank you for that.
So if anyone wants to contact you, Darci, that's my mic. If anyone wants to contact you or get in touch with you, how can they find you?
I'm Darci with an I, Darci Lang. My sweet 16-year-old mom said if she's a boy, put a Y on it. If it's a girl, put an I. So I was destined to be Darci. So it's DarciLang.com. And of course, I'm Darci Lang on all handles, social media, and of course on my website, and books are there and all that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I've had a wonderful 40 minutes, and it's always a pleasure. And around the world, people are listening, and I know they'll get in touch with you. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Grateful for what you're doing to spread kindness in the world, Lisa. Thank you for that.
All right. Well, that ends our podcast with Darci Lang, Darci with an I. We hope you enjoyed our time together. And thank you, every one of you, for joining us. If you're part of Leader Impact, you can always discuss or share this wisdom with your group. And if you're not yet in the Leader Impact group, we would love to have you. So check out our groups available in your area at leaderimpact.ca, or get in touch with us and we will connect you. Stay in touch with our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media, or get in touch with us at info@leaderimpact.ca. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a comment, give us a rating or a review, and this will help other leaders find our podcasts. Thank you for engaging with us, and remember, impact starts with you.